creepy and cool TikToks that will blow your mind. Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's go!
Disclaimer: this video is for entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research, as these clips haven't been fact-checked.
This guy right here is not Indian or Pakistani or South Asian. He's actually fully Japanese. Yeah, he was a legendary
No way.
judoka and the teacher of Kimura Masahiko, who went on to beat Helio Gracie, one of the founders of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Yeah, and he also tried to assassinate Hideki Tojo in his later life. But why? You see, his name was Tatsukuma Ushijima, and he was actually born in Kumamoto in 1904. This guy is so legendary that if you break down his name into kanji, the literal meaning is Ox Island Dragon Bear. He was a multi-time national champion, and he was so feared that he was called a demon, Oni no Ushijima, and his training sounds something straight out of an anime. He would pick up giant boulders, throw them, swing a 30 kilogram or 70 pound hammer for reps, and he used to drink the blood of a snapping turtle before every match. He ended
What? That's sick.
up winning the All Japan Judo Championship twice, but his age caught up with him and he started losing, saying "Make wa shito dogi," which basically means defeat is synonymous with death, so he decided to retire and start his own dojo. And this is where he became Kimura Masahiko, another legendary judoka's mentor. A quick side note, Ushijima actually visited Beijing in China to challenge the local martial artists there, technically making him the first mixed martial artist. Yeah, this is him wearing the Shuai Jiao outfit before he went to challenge the martial artist. Now, Kimura was also a demon. Some people call him one of the greatest judokas to ever live. He even fought kids that came to him with a knife and beat them. One time he chased down this guy who stabbed him in the buttocks, and the parents had to profusely apologize. And then some other guy tried to do the same thing, and he beat him, and nobody ever tried to fight him again. I mean, just look at him. Like, I would not try to fight this guy. So Kimura was touring Hawaii, and during that tour, he got invited by the Sao Paulo Shimbun, a Japanese Brazilian newspaper outlet, to come to Brazil. When he was there, he gets challenged by none other than Helio Gracie, one of the founders of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Kimura had an 80-pound advantage on Helio Gracie, so they had to play by Gracie's rules, which essentially, usually if you throw somebody or pin somebody down, you will get awarded a point and you can win a match through points. But it was only through submission or if you just knocked out. Yeah, Kimura ended up snapping his arm and the Gracie family threw in the towel. That's not even the craziest anime story part. They planned to assassinate the Prime Minister of Japan, Hideki Tojo, who was leading World War II at the time. Ushijima's plan was to throw a bomb in Hideki Tojo's car, and he picked Kimura to do it, but he couldn't because Ushijima got arrested the day before, and he was released because he was a nationalist and he wanted Japan to not be completely annihilated by the war. Also, if you know Golden Kamui, Ushiyama is directly based on Ushijima. Pretty crazy.
I thought it was, what's his name? Katsushi Sakuraba, something like that defeated the Gracie clan.
Jeffrey Epstein had a caboose on Zorro Ranch, but in the last few years, it's gone missing. This is a highly suspicious rabbit hole that I really think needs to be looked into by authorities. So if you've gone through any of the Epstein files, you've probably seen this caboose. This is an image of the caboose in Jeffrey Epstein's notorious birthday book. And if you go through the photos found in the Epstein files, you can see lots of images taken of and inside of this train car. Like this image right here, which appears to show two Epstein survivors out front of the caboose, and this image of the caboose found elsewhere in the files. But I think this image says a lot. As you can see, this caboose, this old train car, was out in the middle of nowhere, literally on the border, the very edge of Epstein's Zorro Ranch property. Why was it so far away from everything else? Why is it in such a desolate area? I mean, this is a place at the end of the day where people were coming and going to and from. This is a location that people were being brought to and photographed in front of. So why is it so far away from everything else on the property? Now, interestingly, the original poster of the video that I found about this created this map. And you can see this is kind of a breakdown of the Zorro Ranch property. The main house was up there. And then way at the tippy top almost, there was the caboose. And I don't know how to properly express this to people, but unless you've been there like I have, you don't really understand how far away these points are from each other. But the caboose was extremely far from the house. And it's interesting because the caboose seemed to sit right on the border of the state land and Epstein's property. I've seen some sources claim that it was on Epstein's land, some sources say it was on state land, but regardless, the caboose was there. Epstein purposefully had it brought to the land and installed there, and the real reason why has never been fully explained. Now, interestingly, I believe this is an image found in the Epstein files from within the caboose itself. The area seemed to have been set up for visitation. There appears to be a table and chairs in the caboose, but this is kind of the only photo I could find of what is allegedly the interior. I don't know who these people are that are in the image, but here's where things get really interesting. So, according to actual maps provided by the New Mexican government, we can see that the caboose was present on property in 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. But then suspiciously in 2023, somewhere in March of that year, the caboose vanishes. The caboose was removed at some point before the property was sold to the new owners, meaning that Epstein's estate still had control of the property, I believe, when the caboose was removed. But to have this thing brought out to the ranch, Epstein had to use a crane, contractors, it was a whole process. But there's no mention of this thing being removed at all. And to my knowledge, it was never searched by authorities. So why was it removed? Where is it now? Has it been searched? This caboose could have had damning evidence inside of it, and yet it's nowhere to be found. Follow along for more updates.
The horror from the earthquake in Venezuela is not over. It's actually just beginning. It's almost like a rerun of what happened in Haiti back in 2010 after their earthquake. A lady named Laura Silsby got caught at the border with 33 children, and she said that they were orphans and they were going to be adopted in the United States. Turns out that was a lie. They were not orphans, actually, and there was no adoption papers at all, and they were all reunited with their parents. She was later found guilty, and she was convicted, but the Clintons got her a lawyer, right? And immediately after this, she began working as the board of directors for AlertSense. Yeah, you know, the Amber Alert company? You know, the company, the emergency response for abducted children. Yeah, she started working for them. Anyways, fast forward. I'm going to jump around, but even the missing children from the Maui fire. Yeah, a lot of kids still remained missing and the media did not cover it at all. Okay. Then you have Wayfair, who was posting missing children's names as their furniture for 4 years. A couple examples I'll have here. You got back in 2019, a 17-year-old went missing named Shamaya. A few days later, they posted a Shamaya 5 cabinet for almost $13,000. Okay. And then back in 2020, a 16-year-old named Yuritsa from Connecticut went missing. And then a couple days later, they had the Yuritsa storage cabinet for almost $14,000. Lots of posts that are very similar to this were posted on Wayfair for 4 years. And now
This is crazy if this is true.
Now you have this app called Vinted, which is a thrifting app where people are posting many of these disturbing posts since after the earthquake in Venezuela. Even one labeled Rescued Venezuela Plushie from Earthquake, 6 years old, 3,800 euros. If you look at these descriptions, it's absolutely disgusting. You got pink, tight. The list goes on.
What?
Good, very good, used, lightly used. Okay. I know I'm going back and forth, but children are being bought and sold. This is very serious. It is happening right under our noses. And I'm telling you, it is like the same trafficking operation that the Clinton Foundation had back in the Hades. And now it's happening in Venezuela.
What's going on is that apparently they are taking traumatized and orphaned children to use for child trafficking.
God, please have mercy on these children.
Today I'll be talking.
Did you know there is a website called fakeababy.com? Fakeababy.com has a legal disclaimer at the bottom of the website indicating that it is only for, quote, pranks. But they know what they're doing. The ad at the top reads, "How can I get his attention? We can help." At fakeababy.com, you can buy fake pregnancy tests, fake sonograms, fake prescriptions. All of these things range in the $10 to $20 range. Your boyfriend thinks that you're lying about being pregnant? Waltz into the bathroom where you've stocked up with fakeababy.com pregnancy test, pee on a pregnancy test, and there you go. Positive result. And it's pretty good. The sonograms that they sell are printed using the identical printers to the ones that are used in the hospitals. So fakeababy.com, they're really going the extra mile. I mean, they're the best in the game when it comes to faking a baby. You can even buy fake STD tests to send to your husband's mistress claiming that he has HIV. You can buy fake paternity tests and a fake silicone baby belly. The The baby bellies are the most expensive products and will set you back about $130 or more if you customize it. They're made out of silicone and it looks pretty authentic. I mean, I think if you're a medical professional or if you've been pregnant before, you could probably tell up close that it's fake. Or if you touch it for too long, you could probably tell. But who's going to do that? But still, the question at the end of this is, what would be the end goal in lying about a pregnancy? Why would this couple go to fakeababy.com? Like, how do you purchase a silicone baby bump, invite everyone to your baby shower or your gender reveal, go to doctor's appointments nonstop, post on Facebook about your pregnancy all the time, and think that everyone's just going to forget about it when the due date rolls around? What is the purpose of the lie? And what are you going to do when the lie catches up to you?
Right. This is creepy, but let's not do this though. By the way, I watched that documentary. It's sick.
Before the Aztecs and before the Maya, there were a culture who are referred to as the Olmecs. We don't know what they called themselves. That's what the Aztecs called them. They called them the Olmecs, and it means the rubber people, a rubber producing area of Mexico. They worked in giant megalithic constructions. What they're most famous for is these huge carved human heads, which can be on a scale of up to 20 to 25 tons in weight, and which have curious features, which have been interpreted variously as Polynesian, African. One of the things I've realized is that there is no classic Native American feature.
What do we think those helmets were that they were wearing?
Nobody knows, because no physical example of such a helmet has ever been found, just like no physical example of an Egyptian crown has ever been found. All we see is the stone reproductions of them.
Do they universally wear these helmets in these stone reproductions?
They pretty much all wear these helmets in the Olmec stonework.
According to Josephus, Nimrod says he wants to build a megastructure, a tower, likely a ziggurat based on the time period. One so big that if God tried to flood the world again, the people would be safe from the waters. Not only that, should God try to flood the world again, Nimrod could use the tower to ascend to heaven and take his revenge on God. Now, there are two important details I want to cover here, and they involve Near Eastern people's understanding about cosmic geography. Ancient Near Eastern people held the idea of a veil between realities, and according to them, there are some places in our world where the veil is thinner than in others. Mount Hermon, where Christ was transfigured, is thought to be one such place, and extra-biblical texts say that this is the gate through which the Elohim called Watchers entered our realm of space-time to marry human women and create Nephilim. The tower being a ziggurat is also an important detail because these were temple structures that were believed to be bridges between the spiritual and physical realms. And this was going to be the biggest ziggy of all time, and the city being built around it was to be called Babalim, or the Gate of the Gods. Also, consider the fact that the plain of Shinar is not the most convenient place for this kind of project. For starters, there's not a lot of wood in this area. And on top of that, this is an alluvial floodplain, so there's not a lot of rock here either. The ground in this area is super soft, which makes it perfect for farming, but awful for engineering projects. And this one is so massive that they needed one of two things. For this type of structure, they either needed to dig an incredible amount of soil out of the way to be able to make room on the bedrock, which would require technology that archaeologists have said that they don't have, or they would have had to have engineered a base so massive that the weight distribution kept it from sinking. Which would have been really hard to do, because in an alluvial plain, there's water everywhere, including in the ground. Building a foundation either way would have been an insane engineering project. So it's likely that the Shinar Plain was chosen despite the massive inconvenience because it was thought to be a dimensional gateway through which Nimrod could invade heaven.
Now you can see why God said nope and confused their languages.
Well, this lady found a hollowed out goat's horn in her yard, okay, buried in the garden. She just moved into a Victorian home, and she finds this thing. And it looks to be like a cornucopia or like a horn. First of all, immediately no, I would put that thing back where you got it. But she decides to bring it in, clean it out, and blow in this thing. Obviously, something crazy happens. So she blows inside the horn. Her phone immediately glitches out and shuts off. She freaks out, makes a new video saying that she had to go buy a new phone, shows us the old phone, and that she had a nightmare that night of like memories of a life that wasn't hers. Now this continues, and she continues to have like implanted memories of another life. But here's the best part. She uploads a video showing us that on this goat's horn, there are symbols carved into it. I tried to look up what these symbols mean. Nothing comes up. I don't recognize it. The only thing that comes up related to it is like cavemen drawings. I don't know. So this woman for sure let something crazy in her body and in her house. What do you guys think? And if you want to hear more of this story, you can go check out her page.
I agreed. I think she should have left it where it was because, this world is becoming more and more sensitive to the supernatural.
This is the most disturbing and sadistic cult of all time, and it wasn't that way because of their followers. It's because what their leader, Roque Thoreau, did to their followers. Warning, this is extremely brutal, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. These are the Anthill Kids, a doomsday cult in Quebec, Canada that started in the late 70s and lasted all up until the late 80s. Their leader, Roque Thoreau, was a violent alcoholic who would sit on his ass all day while everyone else worked till exhaustion, hence the name Anthill Kids. Over the years, he got progressively worse. Followers weren't even allowed to talk to him or anyone else without his say-so. Out of the 8 female followers he had, he fathered 20 kids. If anyone ever tried to escape the cult, they'd be hung up by the ceiling and have every hair in their body plucked out. Punishments for the most mundane things would involve castration if you're a female, a soldering iron to a certain private area. He also claimed to be a spiritual healer and would perform horrific surgeries on people. One time, a female follower complained about a toothache and he ripped out 8 of her teeth. The worst surgery is when a female complained about a stomach ache. He cut her open, inserted a tube into her intestine, and filled her up with oil and molasses. He then grabbed the intestine, ripped off a piece of it, put it back inside of her, and then stitched her back up. She passed away in excruciating pain the next day. After this, a female follower tried to escape. He brought her into the house, pinned her arm to a wall, and then amputated it with a chainsaw. That didn't stop her though. She finally escaped, hitchhiked to a hospital, and then told the police. That is what brought the Anthill Kids to an end. Roque Thoreau was sentenced to life in prison, where he bragged to his cellmate until his cellmate finally had enough. The cellmate unalived him with a shank, then went to the guard, dropped the shank, and said, quote unquote, "That piece of shit is down on the range. I've just sliced him up." This was an extremely condensed version for TikTok. If you want the more in-depth version, I'll be posting it to my YouTube.
The prison guy did more justice.
You are not going to believe what your AirPods can do. Some people are calling it MK Ultra 2.0.
Guess MK Ultra never really ended, and it's instead been upgraded into your AirPods. This is an official patent submitted by Apple to include EEG signal tracking within their new AirPod structure. EEG is how your brainwaves are monitored, so say you're in a heightened state of awareness, or maybe you're in a really bad mood. That means that Apple AirPods would be able to sense this and would potentially even be able to influence it, because who's to say they can also give information as well as receive it.
You might think she's exaggerating, but you probably haven't heard what just came out about MK Ultra.
Did you ever meet someone you suspected had been MK Ultra?
Not a single day goes by that I don't get emails from people who say that the CIA planted a chip in their brain or the CIA is beaming waves at their head. I get that a lot. But then I got an email from a woman. She was the wife of a foreign ambassador. So I go up to her apartment and knock on the door. I open the door and literally the entire apartment, floor, walls, ceiling is covered in aluminum foil. And she's like, "It's to reflect the waves." And I was like, fuck, she's insane. In good conscience, I couldn't take her money. But then I had a former CIA colleague tell me somebody's beaming waves at me. And I'm like, dude, not you too. And he said, "I'm serious, man." He said, "I went for an MRI and it shows a traumatic brain injury. And all of a sudden I'm nauseous and I'm dizzy. Next thing you know, it's called Havana syndrome."
I'm glad that I lost my iPod 3 Pro.
This Twilight Zone episode was the original obsession. The Chaser is about this man named Roger who is obsessed with Layla. He's trying to get her at any cost. She's not interested in him. So he goes and he finds this witch doctor kind of guy who gives him a love potion. He gives Layla the potion and it kicks in immediately, and at first it's working perfectly. But then Roger starts to learn that this potion is working a little too well. Sound familiar? Instead of falling in love naturally, Layla becomes absolutely consumed by him. She follows him everywhere. She constantly smothers him in attention. She won't leave him alone for even a second. She's obsessed with him. And on paper, this is everything that he wanted. But the scary thing is, Layla loses all of her independence, and this fantasy starts to turn into a nightmare. And we can already see the similarities. Both of these stories, Obsession and the Twilight Zone episode, The Chaser, are both asking the same question. At what point does love stop being love and become something terrifying? Roger quickly realizes that he doesn't want to be with someone who is magically forced to be with him, so he goes back to the old man and he begs to find a way out of this. The man offers another potion, except this one is poison. He tells Roger that if he wants his freedom back, he has to kill Layla before he loses the nerve to do it. But then, right before he can go through with it, Layla reveals to him that she is pregnant. In both stories, a guy wants a girl who doesn't want to be with him. And once the guy gets what he wishes for, he realizes that this isn't love, this is obsession. And what makes these relationships so terrifying is that they are completely one-sided and unnatural. And even though the woman is suffering, similar to Bear, this man Roger is willing to continue through with it because he's getting what he wants. And that's really where the episode ends. The dude just keeps going along with it instead of the way that Bear ended things. The whole point of all of these stories is to be careful what you wish for, because you never know what the result could be. And of course, like, we want women to have autonomy and other things like that too. If you like this, my name is Grace. I would love to be your horror girl.
Tales from the Crypt did a version of this as well, which was really creepy.
We had actual vampire hunters in Poland. Where I'm from, in Bieszczady Mountains, there's a lot of evidence.
Like Blade? Yeah, man, I love hearing about the paranormal lore.
Not only archaeological, but also from ethnographic studies about these kind of anti-vampiric burials. They were happening even up to 1920s, 1930s, where, the entire villages sometimes would have individuals buried with either their head would be cut off and placed between their legs because that was considered to immobilize vampire. There was a strong belief that vampires had two hearts, and when the person died and one of their hearts was no longer alive, that's when the second heart would kick in and they were able to get up and start walking and terrorizing the entire village. So many of those villages would do preventive measures to basically not allow that vampire or upiór, as what we would call them, to get up and do harm to the rest of the village. So sometimes they would put like a lock around their toe. The heart would be pierced with like a special type of nail, sometimes 3. Sometimes sickle would be placed around the neck. But when all those things failed and somehow the vampire still would wake up and walk, you would call Bacha. Bacha was a man who would specialize in vampires. They were vampire hunters. And they would go to the village. They were like a paid person. They basically would go to the village and would exhumate the human remains. And first they would examine, if that particular individual if there was a sign of walking, sometimes if the body was not decomposing in a normal way, or maybe there was a sign of like movement within the body, they would deem that, okay, this is a vampire, and in fact, certain rituals need to be performed. Each bacha would have their own set of rituals that they would never share with other people. They would only like pass it down from generation to generation. And sometimes even clergy was present, as we know from ethnographic studies, during these rituals. One of the rituals included sprinkling salt and poppy seed mixture around the grave, because it was believed that when the vampire wakes up, they will have to count every grain of salt and poppy seed. And unfortunately, they're not going to be able to do it before the sunrise. And sunrise was believed to neutralize them.
Of course, John Waters has one of the strangest ghost stories I've ever heard. In the late 1950s, when John was 10 years old, he spent the summer at Camp Happy Hollow outside of Baltimore, Maryland. Near the end of camp, all campers and counselors went on an overnight hike deep in the woods. After the fire died down that night, everyone retreated to their tents. Sometime in the night, John awoke to a camper calling out for a counselor. One by one, the other kids woke up too. Then, they all noticed lights flickering between the trees, followed by a low growl from the woods. John walked into the woods alone, and that's when he saw it, a floating orb of light darting abruptly through the darkness. It froze in front of him and morphed into an elderly man's face, and strangest of all, it smelled like powdered sugar. John said it felt oddly familiar and not frightening. The face inside the orb started changing. The old man's teeth began popping out one by one, and then it vanished completely. John said that the experience gave him something important, a deep confidence to believe in things he couldn't understand. So was it imagination or something otherworldly?
It was Joe Biden.
Mandy here. Let's put it all together again and again until we get it. The Freemasons Illuminati are a group of elite satanic sex occultists who runs our world. We live on a fraction of the earth. The Illuminati have imprisoned us inside the icy shorelines of Antarctica that we call our world. Beyond the icy walls, there are other continents inhabited by other humans, or let's say extraterrestrials. The inhabitants of those continents see us as their North Korea. We have been imprisoned for centuries by them. Some of their satanic occultist ancestors include Julius Caesar, Claudius, and Alexander the Great. The satanic occultists are the highest degrees of Freemasons. They have erased some 200,000 years of our history. They worship Satan and other demonic entities. They wrote the script for monotheistic religions such as Zoroastrianism, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism to control and pin the people of the world against each other. They are cannibals who steal our children for food, sports, and sacrifices. They have censored our news, the internet, and the entire media. They poisoned our food, water sources, and spread disease within our population like the virus and cancers. They use robotics to create earthquakes, floods, droughts, and storms as a reset for New World Order. They plan to imprison us further by using digital IDs and smart cities. They have infiltrated all the governments of our world. Their biggest fear is revolution, and we can start by overthrowing every government.
We have already lost. We are just watching it play out.
A religious cult disappeared in the mountains decades ago, and people are still debating whether or not In Search Of was based on something real. And that's exactly what the new horror movie Tribe is built on. The film follows an investigator who is searching for a missing community hidden deep in the wilderness, but the deeper he goes, the more disturbing the footage becomes. So as he finds journals and videos that lead him to the answers surrounding this strange disappearance, he may have also stumbled onto something that was better left forgotten. What makes this movie creepy is how it taps into the same style of internet horror that's been popping up online for years. We have corrupted VHS tapes, distorted audio, and recovered footage that feels authentic. Instead of relying on gore and jump scares alone, Tribe plays with the fear that maybe these recordings were never meant to be found in the first place. That's why critics and The Guardian are praising Tribe. It feels more like a scary documentary than an actual horror film, and it leaves you with the idea that you accidentally found footage you were never supposed to see.
People who sell their souls live forever. That's at least what Cat Williams say, and other people that I've talked to who are in Hollywood say that if you sell your soul, you can live forever. You can transfer your consciousness from one body to the next. And supposedly this is why you see people that just keep popping up in history over and over again. Even if you don't believe this is possible, there is something very suspicious about this, and there is an undertone, if you study the occult and the dark arts, that there is something that resembles exactly what we're talking about here as part of their practice, people who make a covenant with death.
An ancient civilization that you've probably never heard of before created some of the most precise stonework in the ancient world. Welcome to episode 45 of Ancient Site Sunday. Follow to never miss a weekly adventure. Today, we're exploring Tiwanaku in Bolivia. Located near Lake Titicaca, Tiwanaku was the center of a powerful pre-Columbian civilization that thrived between about 500 and 1000 CE, influencing huge parts of the southern Andes. At its peak, Tiwanaku was a city and ceremonial center covering several square kilometers and home to upwards of 10,000 people, acting as a cultural hub across the entire region. The site is filled with massive stone structures that were built with incredible precision. And nowhere is that clearer than Pumapunku, which, if you watch Ancient Aliens, you might have heard of. Pumapunku is a monumental platform complex made from enormous sandstone and andesite blocks, some weighing over 100 tons. Many of these stones are cut into clean geometric forms, including the famous H-shaped blocks with with sharp angles and joints that fit together with incredible accuracy. Some stones feature drilled holes, channels, and cutouts, suggesting they were designed to interlock or support complex architectural layouts. Archaeologists believe the site once included plazas, ramps, and finely carved gateways made from single blocks of stone. And to make it clear, this was not built by aliens. At its height, Pumapunku and the other buildings at Tiwanaku may have been decorated with polished metal plaques, bright colors, and elaborate ornamentation. These ceremonial buildings would have been filled with priests, elites, and ceremonial activity. The Tiwanaku complex also had major monuments like pyramids and sunken temples that point to a society with advanced engineering, agriculture, and spiritual traditions. Around 1000 CE, the city declined, likely due to environmental changes such as a prolonged drought. By the time later civilizations like the Inca encountered the ruins, Tiwanaku was already ancient, and it was so impressive to them that they believed it was the place where the world was created. Many of the stones at Tiwanaku are scattered and displaced, making it difficult to fully reconstruct what once stood there, but the site shows that even after abandonment, a place can continue to hold meaning and importance for the people who live nearby.
So what's the difference between Bigfoot and the Giant of Kandahar? Well, this is conjecture on my part because, when was the last time someone sat down with Beelzebub with 20 questions in an interview? It's not going to happen now, is it? Of course, that's tongue-in-cheek and I'm being glib here. I believe that Bigfoot are modern-day Nephilim. That's what I believe. I believe they've been genetically altered in some way, all right? The Giant of Kandahar may have been a Nephilim that lasted thousands of years. Now, we've had 4 witnesses, just so you know. We've got the original shooter. We've got the second witness who was at the base in Kandahar. The third witness was a guy in some sort of special ops program. That's all I know. And he had an encounter with one at the same cave. The fourth one was from the grandson of the witch that used to bring the goats and the cattle, whatever, to the cave entrance so the giant wouldn't come in and eat the children. I'm not making this stuff up. It's on our YouTube channel. I am Elie Marzulli.
To give you an idea just how thorough this guy was, back when he defeated his nephew, he not only executed the royal ministers, but also their household musicians, and threw the ministers' teenage daughters and wives, and hundreds of upper-class women, to military brothels. And some of them died of inevitable abuse, and Youngla was asked what to do with their bodies. He replied that they should be fed to the camp dogs. Okay, hold on. You might be asking, how did this guy shape modern China, Otis? Remember what I said? He was a paradox. At the same time, he was the most aggressive patron of Islamic religious protection in Chinese history, having an admiral who spread Islam, who really deserves his own video, with great mosques being developed under his reign. The Tibetan Buddhist canon was mass-printed on his order. He received the 5th Karmapa Lama with full imperial honors. He believed Sanskrit brought him divine protection with it being carved in some of his commissioned temples. And set up the Changping granary system, the granaries of constant peace. In fact, guess what the punishment was if you were a corrupted official trying to get taxes during a famine? Yeah, 1,000 cuts immediately. Well, not immediately, but you know what I mean. The man had a frontier-formed political formula, but I meant it when I said he forms modern China. Look at the Forbidden City, built between 1406 and 1420, requiring over 1 million workers and 100,000 artisans, covering 180 acres of guess what? The northern frontier military outpost of Beijing, Youngla moving the capital from Nanjing, because Beijing was his personal familiar power base. But the inner workings of his city were unbelievable. You got the dual-gong bracket system, those wooden joint structures that interlock without nails, glue, or even a metal fastener. Built with even anti-seismic technology, where if an earthquake strikes, these joints can absorb the strike. A thought had in 1406. You got the 250-ton marble carving outside the wall of preserving harmony, transported in the dead of winter. 250-ton stone being moved by sliding it from sheets of ice. Then you got the golden bricks, floor material of the Hall of Supreme Harmony. The clay sourced from specific Chinese lakes, cured for 8 months and baked in kilns for 130 days. 30 days of straw smoke, 30 days of wood chips, 40 days of pine branches, 30 days of chestnut hulls. Each brick was then soaked in tung oil, producing 600-year-old floors with a metallic finish. There's the 9-story Tower of Nanjing, one of the 7 wonders of the medieval world. Youngla sending 300,000 soldiers and artisans to mountains in central China to then create the Mount Wudang complex, 33 palatial complexes, monasteries, and facilities, and the beautiful Golden Hall. Yongle also built the largest encyclopedia in history, but it was destroyed and lost. Yongle died returning from a military campaign in 1424 at the age of 64, fighting the Mongols for decades, even shaping the Great Wall from it.
Gorgeous.
The ropes they used weren't ordinary. They were sacred Shinto ropes. Shimenawa meant to mark spiritual boundaries. Made from rice straw, they were thick and rough. The priests would take the ropes and tie them around her wrists, and each loop would make the fibers cut deeper into her skin. Then they would wrap her ankles so she couldn't run. And then, the worst part, they would tie ropes around her neck. Not a noose that would tighten and suffocate her right away. More like a collar. And the ropes were then tied to oxen, placed at 5 separate points, connected to her head and her limbs. The priests would step back, and the head of the family, usually the eldest male, would begin to chant. The prayers were in Old Japanese, archaic words that even modern speakers wouldn't recognize. And with each verse, the oxen would be guided to move. Not all at once, but slowly, each pulling in a different direction, causing the ropes to tighten around the girl's flesh. The ritual was meant to take hours, and the separation had to be gradual. At first, the ropes would just tighten, and she would feel the pressure. But then the ropes would start cutting into her skin, and that's when the panic would set in. But the more she resists, the tighter the knots would become. She would try to scream, but the rope around her neck would choke her. And through all of this, the family would just keep chanting. They justified this cruelty because it served a greater purpose. So when they heard her desperate screams, they didn't flinch because they didn't see her as a person anymore. She was a vessel. With each prayer, the oxen would move a little further and the ropes would pull a little tighter. Her wrists would start to dislocate and her ligaments would tear. And through it all, she would be conscious. They say that in the final moments, when the ropes had been pulled as far as they could go, something would shift. The temperature in the room would drop. The candles would flicker. And then, with one final pull, the ropes would do their job. Her limbs would separate from her body. Her head was pulled off. And when it was over, when her body, what was left of it, was still, the family would gather the ropes, because those blood-soaked ropes were the seal to the Hell Gate. And so the gate would hold, and the family would be safe, but only for the next 50 years. The Himuro family had performed this ritual for centuries, and it had always worked until it didn't.
Man, why human is so cruel?
The Amalekites being literal vampiric monsters explains the necessity of their eradication. However, the most peculiar part of God's violent command includes the total eradication of their livestock, meaning that the Israelites were not allowed to take even the animals for themselves. The question is why? According to the commentary of the medieval French rabbi and scholar known as Rashi, Saul was commanded to kill even the animals because the Amalekite sorcerers were capable of shapeshifting, even appearing as animals, so the animals were included in the destruction, to prevent any Amalekites from escaping through supernatural deception. This explanation is not stated explicitly in the biblical text, but within the biblical worldview, sorcery, demonic deception, and supernatural acts are treated as real. In the ancient world, belief in sorcery and transformation was widespread. Texts from surrounding cultures describe magicians or various beings taking on other forms. Within the biblical worldview, these occult practices like shapeshifting are treated as real and dangerous. An example of a culture close to the biblical Israelites that believed in the reality of shapeshifting beings are the ancient Egyptians and their beliefs in the trickster god of confusion and disorder, Seth. Like many Egyptian gods, Seth was capable of shapeshifting. He could turn himself into an ox, an oryx, a hippopotamus, a bull, a crocodile, and a panther. He could also take the form of Anubis. Seth's form did not represent any single animal. Rather, he may have represented a mythical chimeric beast. This angle gives more context as to why God was incredibly angry at King Saul's disobedience. Saul slaughtered the Amalekites but spared their king, Agag, and the best of their livestock.
Remember that Rising Star case system in South Africa? The one that was the final resting place for at least 20 individuals of an ancient human relative called Homo naledi? Well, a few days ago, researchers uncovered something totally unexpected. All of the bodies buried deep inside that cave are female. Extracting usable DNA from 300,000-year-old bones is brutally unreliable. DNA just doesn't survive that long in most conditions. So scientists turned to something more durable, ancient proteins preserved inside tooth enamel, specifically a protein called amelogenin. This protein comes in two slightly different versions depending on if it's coded by the X chromosome or the Y chromosome, which means if you found the Y chromosome version, you're looking at a male, and if you don't, you're looking at a female. So they use this method on Homo naledi. They started with 4 skeletons, pulling 1 tooth from each to test, and immediately they noticed something strange. All 4 lacked the Y chromosome variant of amelogenin. So they expanded to 20 individuals total, ranging from infants to the oldest adults in the sample, and they even tried a different method. But still, the results were all the same. Every individual was female. Researchers actually calculated the odds of randomly finding 20 females and 0 males in a group of this size, and the probability is 0.0000954%. In other words, very, very low. Finding a trove of ancient bones that are only female is almost unheard of in paleoanthropology. When archaeologists first came upon the bodies, they naturally assumed that at least some were male, especially the larger skeletons, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So what's happening here? In very rare scenarios, the amelogenin gene on the Y chromosome can vanish due to mutations. But for the mutation to wipe out its signal in even half of the 20 individuals, let alone all of them, the researchers themselves say that's extremely unlikely. The second possibility is that the Y chromosome has degraded much more than the X chromosome over time. In those cases, female false positives can happen. Or this is truly just a cave of all-female skeletons. Berger is eager to see this all-female cave as evidence of a ritual or a culture that requires higher-level thinking. But those claims are genuinely disputed within the field. What we do know is that this is a real, repeatable, verified result. And there's an obvious unanswered question hanging over everything. For this species to exist at all, there had to be males. So where are they? This is like the case of the missing Y chromosome. But here's the wildest part to me. The incredibly narrow and tight passages made it hard for male researchers to enter. Initially, the group of paleoanthropologists that entered the cave were all women. To know that these all-female fossils were discovered by an all-female team is just one of those strange serendipitous moments in scientific exploration. And could this potentially also be the reason why only female skeletons were found in the cave? Who knows? To be continued. If you like science or sharing like this, then follow us everywhere. And don't forget our YouTube show, the same handle, @TIL Science.
Why did some Hungarians believe certain children belonged to another world? In old Hungarian folklore, the Táltos was a person who could travel between the human world, the heavens, and the realm below. But nobody chose this role. People believed Táltos were born marked, often with extra fingers, teeth, or unusual traits that made them seem different from birth. And instead of rejecting these children, communities feared them, respected them, and believed they carried supernatural power. People said Táltos could heal the sick, predict the future, control storms, and protect the balance between worlds. But their most important role happened far from human eyes. During trance-like journeys, they fought invisible battles against forces of chaos, and honestly, some modern Hungarian victory dances look spiritually connected to that tradition. And if the Táltos lost, people believed the entire community would pay the price. Even after Christianity spread through Hungary, the legends survived, because when the world stopped making sense, people still needed someone connected to the unknown.
It was the ancient Hungarian religion, Taoism, a form of shamanism. Is that right? Not just folklore.
Every high school has some sort of open secret, but Centennial High School in Arizona, their open secret would start making national news. It starts off more like an open secret. It's like a rumor. One student says, there were just things about the school that just kept getting swept under the rug. Like there was this male Spanish teacher that was very friendly and flirty with the girl students last year. I don't know if anything happened, but he was fired before anything came up. And this is a real witness, a real student saying this to the police. Then there's the girls' soccer coach and psychology teacher. She's just kind of weird with her students, specifically her male students. She seems like one of those teachers that hates her female students but loves her male students, which is concerning, right? But she would just do this thing where she would constantly call out members of the football team, kids, students, out of their classes and then bring them to her classroom and like just hang out with them. I don't know, it's weird. But there is one student whose name keeps getting brought up in all of this with rumors about the psychology teacher. He's a football player and we're going to be referring to him as Alex. That is not his real name. Yeah, there's just like a rumor between Alex, like he's always around the psychology teacher. If you see her in the hallway, she always wants to be near him. I don't know. It's just sometimes he'll be in her classroom when it's not even his class. And that's not to say that Alex is strange. The teacher is the only strange one here in this scenario, but it's odd to the point that people called her out on it. And she states that the only reason her and Alex are so close is because they're like siblings. He's like her brother. But the teacher is on like the younger side of the other teacher. She's 27. And so while it's highly inappropriate, unprofessional, and should stop, maybe there's nothing more to it. Like maybe that's why nobody reported it. But another recent graduate of Centennial says, I don't know. I overheard something really, really strange. Very strange conversation. The psychology teacher and the football student, they're in the hallway, kind of hush hush whispering, arguing. And as the former student is walking back, they heard the student say something to the teacher along the effect of, I have a girlfriend. Why are you so worried about what I do? Which is just weird. Why would a teacher be so concerned about that? Then there's the video rumor. A couple of students started telling their friends who told their friends, who told their friends, who told their friends, and like maybe some of them told their parents. But the rumor is there's a video of one of the teachers giving a student oral in her classroom.
What? Oh, and the fact that she's a psychology teacher.
Is this an actual photo of the Screaming Queen herself? Who is the Screaming Queen? It's Catherine Howard. She's one of Henry VIII's wives. She was his fifth wife, to be exact. She was gorgeous, and she was also known to have a promiscuous kind of rep, you know? She was 17 when she married him, and he was 49. And we already know at this point he was gross and had the pussy wound on his leg, and you could smell him from like 3 hallways away, you know, just a fantastic husband for the young bride. Catherine was young. She wanted to live her best life, so she started having an affair with Thomas Culpeper. Now, this is the best photo I could find of him. We don't really know what he looks like. He was just described as being a beautiful youth. So some of the photos is like, but this one's pretty good. Okay, so this is Thomas Cranmer, and he's the one that ended up being the reason why Catherine Howard was executed. And it's because he found out that she was having this affair. He had this super, like, deep down hatred for the Boleyns and for the Howards. So he went after her with a vengeance. So this is where it gets all kinds of complicated. There's all kinds of dates and numbers, which I go into depth on my podcast. But here I'm just going to give you kind of like the sum of what happened. Catherine hauled her ass down this gallery hall, right? Kicking and screaming when they went to her and was like, we know what you've been doing, you harlot. We're going to end you. So she took off running down this hallway screaming, hence the name, the Screaming Queen. But she didn't make it to Henry. Henry was down there praying, doing his daily prayers. They caught her before she got there, but she screamed all the way. They said that she acted horrible compared to the other ones when they were told they were going to be executed. I was like, yeah, duh, 'cause she was like 19 at the time. Why wouldn't she act that way? This is Jane Boleyn. This is Anne Boleyn's brother's wife. So this is Anne Boleyn's sister-in-law, but it's also Catherine's lady-in-waiting. Catherine threw her under the bus. She told Henry, like, it wasn't me. Like, she made me have this affair. I was scared of her, which was BS, but that's what she did, right? They brought her in. She freaked out. When they questioned her, she started crying, got hysterical, but she confessed to all of it. And Henry actually felt so bad because she was so upset. He sent her out of the prison to go live with this other girl for a while so that she could calm down and die with dignity. And I'm like, good for him, I guess. But as you can guess how it all ended up, everyone was executed, but they say that this is Catherine, that she still roams around Hampton Court. There's been a lot of photos over the years. A lot of them are totally just fake, but this is supposed to be the most realistic one. So do you think this is her? Do you think this is the Screaming Queen herself? Like, comment, share, follow for more.
People are starting to realize why John McAfee was killed, and it's not because he exposed the media.
The mainstream media has been using a technology called neuro-linguistic programming for more than 15 years. And that neuro-linguistic programming makes you think and believe things which are not true.
It's also not because he exposed the government.
It's those few of you that I'd like to address right now. This sense of longing, this sense of yearning, this sense of not being satisfied is really your loss of freedom. And it is freedom for which you yearn. And you have none in this government. A government of the American people which started out with the people being free and the government being our servants. It has become the government is free and secret and veiled in darkness. And it's the people that are the servants.
People believe John McAfee had to disappear because he knew too much and he kept records.
Look at that thing. Boom. Yup, they destroyed the building.
As soon as his Surfside condo tweet started going viral, mainstream outlets rushed to call it fake. But those same outlets had no problem repeating the official story about his death.
Software mogul John McAfee was found dead in his prison cell this week. He was supposed to be extradited back to the United States, but Spanish authorities say McAfee was found dead in his prison cell. A statement from the Catalonia Regional Government Justice Department says, everything indicates McAfee may have died by suicide.
Most of them also ignored the fact that John McAfee repeatedly said he would never Epstein himself. He was also one of the first high-profile figures to publicly question what happened to Jeffrey Epstein.
Some members of our government have crossed the line, not in suiciding Jeffrey Epstein, if in fact they did, but in giving a story to us, the American public, expecting us to believe it. Now, this is the line they crossed.
The Book of Enoch mentions a secret meeting with the fallen angels on Mount Hermon. A lot of people don't realize that the Book of Enoch is taken seriously by the elite because the United Nations has a literal base on Mount Hermon.
Yeah.
So like when you're looking at these books, like the Book of Enoch, this isn't fiction. They're detailing real locations that the government is involved in capturing. I remember reading this passage in the Book of Enoch, and this is what really changed my walk forever. There was a secret meeting with the fallen angels, and they created a pact. This pact, by the way, it's a real artifact that was recovered. In this pact, they wrote on a tablet, because they were going to suffer eternally, they made an agreement that they were going to work as hard as possible to take as many humans to hell with them. And when I read that, something shifted in my brain. I realized, like, this isn't a joke. There is a literal war against us as humans, and there are angelic beings with a lot of knowledge who are a lot smarter than us. Their greatest desire and their greatest unification is to take us to hell with them. When I read that, my faith changed.
There's always so much talk about the enemy, but the battle is already won. God will forever come out on top.
Now, people believe because the Serrano settlers were eventually kicked out so that mining could commence, that the land is cursed. This is where the first rumors of paranormal activity begin to emerge. There have been reports of skinwalker sightings, Bigfoot sightings, aliens. It's just a huge paranormal hotspot. The legend of the skinwalker comes from the Navajo traditions. They are said to roam around cursed lands where Native Americans used to live. Skinwalkers are considered a witch who has chosen to use its spiritual abilities for evil or selfish purposes. They are believed to have the power to shapeshift into different animals, coyotes, owls, and even dogs. They are known to move at supernatural speed, and sometimes they can mimic voices to lure people out in the night. The Navajo traditionally do not speak about skinwalkers. Even mentioning their name is forbidden. There's also been rumors of a witch that wanders around Lytle Creek. People have seen offerings left, such as oranges and rosemary, along with sticks tied up in a specific manner, resembling that of an occult symbol. And speaking of the occult, there's also rumors of occult gangs out here in Lytle Creek. So many signs point to this being a very dangerous place, and what happened to us tonight certainly proves that point. There was something dark there, and we all felt it. This is probably the most terrified all of us have ever been. We decided to make our way to Lytle Creek in search of answers to find out if there really is the Witch of Lytle Creek, or is it maybe just a skinwalker?
The death of Andrew Dawson genuinely keeps me up at night. Like, I can't believe so many people have forgotten about him. I'm talking about the man that saw a giant on a mountain and recorded it, went viral, and then started getting followed by unmarked vehicles. The amount of times I have tried to spread awareness about his story and my videos have gotten flagged is really alarming, because if it's not truth, then why flag it? Oh, also, this is for entertainment purposes only. There is only so much I can say on this app. I literally did a full deep dive about Nephilim, giants, the history of them, and why I believe they are still here. I think they're living under our feet. I know that sounds insane. I'm also a person that believes sirens exist. If you aren't new to my channels, you already know this. But chances are, if you're here and you follow me, we are like-minded, because it is so hard to talk to people in real life about this stuff. Like, the world is more spiritual than physical, but everyone is so obsessed with thinking about their 9 to 5. I do a complete deep dive on my YouTube, Kayla Lorraine. That's the thumbnail. It's a little spooky, so viewer discretion is advised, but if you guys think like me, definitely go check it out. You'll find your home there.
Facilitated the largest heroin network the world had ever seen. We are taught that the CIA is an organization geared towards national defense by using language such as counterintelligence, counterterrorism. This couldn't be further from the truth. Now, with the newly minted CIA and the fall of the Axis powers, things changed, and the United States found a new target: communism, and anything that might remotely resemble it. Things such as worker organization, unionization, and even civil rights movements. With the United States becoming the world's economic superpower, the CIA became a prime weapon in suppressing labor organization globally. But during the creation of the CIA, something odd was happening, and it started to wreak havoc throughout the United States. That was the rise of heroin. In the 1950s, this was a silent epidemic, something history forgot amidst the larger deluge of drugs decades later. But it gripped working class communities and cultural scenes such as jazz clubs. After World War II, many American troops struggled with addictions that spawned out of their military service. One such addiction was morphine. There's one problem though. Morphine was expensive. It was also highly regulated as a pharmaceutical. Thus, the demand for cheaper, readily accessible alternatives exploded after wartime. But what does this have to do with the CIA? While heroin was around well before World War II, the meteoric rise of heroin coincided with the creation of the CIA, and that was no coincidence. So much so, during the mid-20th century, the CIA was arguably the largest facilitator of the heroin trade in the world. Here's how it worked. Declassified CIA documents show a sophisticated trade network consisting of Chinese organizations procuring opium, Lebanese and Turkish groups trafficking morphine through Greece and southern Europe, while each ingredient were synthesized in labs within Sicily and France, with the final destination being the port of Marseille in southern France, where it was finally exported. In the US, this found its way into New York's ports, and the American mafia then distributed it throughout the continent. And it's estimated nearly 80% of all heroin consumed in the United States originated from this very network. The CIA didn't just turn a blind eye, but facilitated the largest heroin network the world had ever seen.
CIA, FBI, all intelligence lies.
We worshipped a Slavic pagan goddess, Mokosh, as Mother Mary in Bieszczady Mountains, where I'm from, in Poland. And I never realized it as a little child. Mokosh is a Slavic goddess from pagan traditions way before Christianity came that was very much worshipped. And we know we have some indications of that even back to the Middle Ages. She is mentioned. And she was the goddess of earth, of everything living on the earth. She was a goddess of fertility. She was a patron of women and little children. And it's very interesting how when Christianity came, people, instead of completely converting to Christianity and worshiping Jesus, converted to Christianity and started worshiping Matka Boska, or Mother of God. We don't even call her Virgin Mary. Mother Mary.
Yeah, man, that's weird. Why?
I remember growing up in
Just like the Catholic.
in Poland, and we would go to church. We would always pray to her. She was like the go-to. And also she would always be depicted this way. We even would call her the Queen of Poland. And there's so many beautiful days that were devoted to her worship. Like I remember a specific day, August 15th, right when we collect the crops. The day was called Matki Boskiej Zielnej, which translates into the Mother of God of Herbs. And we would go to church. She would be, either her painting or her statue would be adorned with flowers and carried all around the church in a procession, while little girls, and I remember being one of those little girls with beautiful crowns of flowers, we would sprinkle flower petals to mark her way so she could walk on the petals. And then at the end, they would bless, or she would bless, our little herbs, the parts of the crops that we would bring. Sometimes people would even bring animals. I remember bringing my little dog to be blessed by Mary. And it was so stunning coming to United States. And I remember when I was still going to church, I don't consider myself Christian anymore or practicing. But I remember going to church and being like, where's Mary? There's no Mary. There's no worship of Mary. It is absolutely astounding how all that blended.
She's godless, man.
Voltkin, the most malevolent type of werewolf. In transforming, they would literally shed their human skin. They were the only breed to have full control over the gruesome process. They would emerge as the most fearsome, almost demonic wolf creatures known to man. All other known werewolf creatures were the result of curses passed on to the survivors of vicious attacks.
Whoever is bitten by a werewolf and lives becomes a werewolf himself.
The Voltkin, however, were unique because of their origin's connection to the Norse god Loki and his monstrous son, Fenrir, the horrific giant wolf, said to be a god slayer. In the journals of my ancestors, the Toldry line of monster hunters, it is written that Voltkin were like a cult, that new members were initiated and transformed willingly in occult rituals, making them into infernal creatures working to apocalyptic ends. While they had a slight aversion to blessed silver, their divine connection to Loki and Fenrir made them immune to most holy relics, with a strong exception for anything related to the god Thor, whose symbols and relics held strong power against
Silver Bullet will take care of the werewolf.
them.
There's a creepy Ukrainian folktale about how you should never accept hospitality from a magical cabin in the woods. Also about the world's best employee and worst boss. It's called The Voices at the Window. A nobleman goes hunting with a bunch of well-trained huntsmen, but then they find themselves in this forest that's unfamiliar. It gets dark, it starts raining. The nobleman cries out, "Oh, if only we had a warm hut, a white bed, soft bread, sour kvass," which is like a sour drink. "If we had those things, we would stay up telling stories all night long." Suddenly, they see a light off in the distance, and they go and they find a hut that has all the things he asked for. They say, "Grace, eat the food, and I'll go to sleep," except for one huntsman who stays up. He just can't sleep. Suddenly, he hears spirit voices at the window, and they say, "Oh, thou son of a dog, you said you would stay up all night and tell stories. We wanted to hear stories. We didn't get any stories. Therefore, woe is you. Here's what's going to happen on your way home. You're going to see an apple tree full of apples. You're going to want to eat them, but if you do, you'll burst. And if there are any huntsmen listening to this, if you warn him, you will turn to stone to the knees." The huntsman listening goes, "Oh, woe is me." Then another voice is like, "Then you'll come to a spring, and you'll want to drink from it real bad, but if you do, you'll burst. And if anyone warns you, they'll turn to stone to their waist. Then they're like, finally you'll come to this soft feather bed on the side of the highway and you'll want to lay in it. But if you do, you'll burst. And if anyone warns you, they'll turn entirely to stone. The next morning, the nobleman's like, all right, let's go. And our guy's like, because he knows what's going to happen, but he can't say anything. They get to the apple tree, and before the nobleman can take a bite of an apple, our dude goes up to it with his sword, cuts it down, and it turns into ashes immediately. But instead of being grateful, the nobleman is like, what the hell, dude? After him. But our dude goes off ahead and doesn't get caught. He makes it to the spring just before the nobleman and plunges his sword in, and the spring turns to blood. And the nobleman's like, I wanted to drink from that spring so bad, I'm gonna kill you. Our dude gets to the bed, sticks his sword in it, and it turns to stone. And our dude, who really wanted to sleep in the bed, says, all right, guys, go kill him, shoot him down. The huntsman goes ahead, but they finally catch him. He's dragged before the nobleman, and the nobleman says, you, son of Satan, I'm gonna murder you. But the huntsman says, wait, bring me a donkey and let me sit on it while I explain everything I did. And he's like, that's weird, but I'll let you do it. So the huntsman starts telling the story of everything that happened, and instead of his legs turning into stone, the legs of the donkey underneath him start turning into stone. And as he keeps going, it raises and raises and raises until it's turned the whole donkey to stone. And just as he finishes his last word and the donkey's turned entirely to stone, our dude jumps off the donkey and he's fine. Like, phew. That's what happened. And the nobleman's like, oh, okay, cool. Thanks for saving me. You'd think the tree turning to ash and the water to blood and the feathers to coal would have been a clue that he was already trying to help you, but oh well, he got it eventually. Moral of the story, if you tell the forest you're going to tell it stories, you better tell it stories.
Everything is fake and gay, even the natural disasters. All roads lead to human trafficking. Earthquake in Venezuela, manufactured. Let's watch how the fake and the gayness unfolds. Former Venezuelan President Chavez said that this technology was used to cause the earthquakes in Haiti in 2010. And what I'm showing you right now was recorded in Venezuela by witnesses right before the earthquake happened. So you see that there's an earthquake in Venezuela. You should immediately be fucking suspicious. And then let's just wait a couple days. Oh, look.
For thousands of missing Venezuelan children, the earthquake is not over. The most dangerous part is just now beginning. The exact same trafficking operation that they did in Haiti to send kids to Epstein Island is being done right now in Venezuela. The app being used to traffic these children is called Vented. Here's one of the posts. It says, rescued Venezuelan plushie from the earthquake, 3,800 euros.
Reports of Vinted being the new Wayfair have been flooding my inbox for the past few weeks. Tons and tons of screenshots from Vinted, the same way there were tons and tons of screenshots from Wayfair. And back then there were people trying to disprove the Wayfair thing, and still there are BB's bitch creators today on this app trying to disprove the Vinted thing. I was skeptical back in the Wayfair days, back in the Pizzagate days, before the Epstein files dropped, but genuinely, how the fuck do you not understand that all roads lead to human trafficking in, what is it, the end of June 2020? Oh, July 1st, 2026. Wake the fuck up.
So these 200 angels descend onto Mount Hermon because they are quite literally thirsty for the women on earth, right? But the leader Shemyaza is like, hey, if I do this, y'all gotta do it too, right? Swear on it. So they all take a blood oath to go sleep with human women, right? But hold on. How did angels mate with human women? Babe, angels take human form several times in the Bible, right? My favorite example, angels arrive in Sodom as humans to save Lot and his fam, right? They had to be looking right because the men of Sodom all surround Lot's house and demand they get to shoot they shot with these men. And yes, they knew these angels were men because Lot offers up his daughters and they're like, oh, hell no, give us what we want. You know what I'm saying? So the angels have to blind everyone and drag Lot and his family out of there, which, my God, Lot is a whole other video because shit gets weird. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, the Watchers in Enoch could have possibly been looking straight up human and gorgeous at that. So mating with human women may have not been that complicated at all because these men in Sodom lost their minds over the angels, right? And as far as birth goes, babies start out small to start, right? Then they go big. Like my 11-year-old is my height and he started in here as this big, you know what I'm saying? So most likely the Nephilim didn't start out as giants, but they became massive giants.
I saw this video last night.
Must have been out of her head.
Okay.
And Logan Canyon here in Utah instantly came to mind. So Logan Canyon on its own at night is really creepy to me for some reason. But 8 miles deep into the Logan Canyon sits an abandoned property known as St. Anne's Nunnery, or St. Anne's Retreat. It was built in 1915, and originally it was a summer camp for the rich. Then it was donated to the Catholic Church, where it was turned into a spiritual retreat for nuns. It was eventually shut down and abandoned, and now it sits on 2.5 acres of Forest Service land. But the rumors about this place are incredibly creepy. Rumors about nuns who accidentally got pregnant and then drowned their babies in the camp's swimming pool so no one would hear them cry. The swimming pool is now empty, by the way, but locals say you can still hear babies cry deep in the woods here. There are other rumors about big dogs with glowing red eyes, murders that took place on the campsite, and eventually a real documented crime took place here, also in the swimming pool. Locals say this is one of the most haunted places in Utah, and whether that's true or not, I know one thing is for sure. The road leading up to this abandoned camp at night is genuinely terrifying, and it's a road that I've only driven once. This isn't my typical content, as what I'm about to tell you is mainly just urban legends and folklore with no real proof to back it up, but it is terrifying. And if you want to lose sleep tonight, stick around, lock your doors, and let's talk about it. So like I mentioned, this is St. Anne's Retreat, and it's an abandoned summer camp. It wasn't always named that though. And to really understand why this place is so creepy, we need to go all the way back and learn the history. So this property was originally owned by a man named Hezekiah Hatch, but I've seen many articles refer to him as Boyd, so that's what I'm going to call him. Boyd was a prominent businessman in Logan, and he had ownership in multiple companies like Hilton, RKO Motion Pictures, and Paramount. He built the very first cabin for his wife in 1915 as she really liked camping and being outside. And from that, they expanded to about 21 buildings. This includes 2 main lodges, 6 smaller cabins, a playhouse, a massive swimming pool, and some other cool buildings. At one point in time, there was even a theater and a horse stable, but those were eventually demolished. Boyd put in a lot of work to make this grand summer camp, and it eventually turned into a summer retreat called Hatch Camp for his other friends and family. During their operation, they hosted a lot of movie stars, government leaders, and millionaires. Like, this was a summer camp for only the most prominent and wealthy. Once Boyd and his wife died, this was passed down to their children, who continued the summer retreat. Eventually, in the 1950s, Hatch Camp was donated to the Roman Catholic Church, and it was then turned into a spiritual retreat and youth camp. They changed the name to St. Anne's Retreat, and a lot of people know it as St. Anne's Nunnery.
I was at an event with Eileen Dietz many years ago, and she's the woman who played the demon in the movie The Exorcist, and also did some of the most physically demanding scenes as a body double for the main actress. And so she's the woman that came up with the voice of the demon in the film. And she was sitting at the end of the table, and there was probably 15 or 16 people at a bunch of tables pushed together in a long row. And she had said, and she's a small woman, you know, very sweet, very nice lady. And she had asked for the ketchup, and nobody heard her because, you know, we were in a loud restaurant at lunchtime and the place was packed. And she asked for the ketchup again, and nobody heard her. And she used the voice from the movie The Exorcist, and she said, "Do not deny me," in the voice of the demon from the film. And she said it loud. Everything in the restaurant stopped. It was so funny because it's ingrained in everybody that's ever seen that film.
Yeah, that movie is crazy. Awesome day and always. God bless.